Hi, I'm Jenny Holm, and I am thrilled to be sharing the first chapter of my new novel, Outside, with you today. It is very different from anything I've written in the past, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's dive in. The near future, somewhere in North America. Chapter 1, Razzi. I dreamt that I was running outside. Ancient trees with sprawling branches towered above me. Patches of little purple flowers were scattered here and there. Fruit hung from the trees, lemons and bananas and bunches of purple grapes. I grabbed a ripe peach and took a bite. It was juicy and sweet, sweeter than any peach I'd ever eaten before. There were animals in my dreamscape too, deer and scampering squirrels and a whole family of red foxes that tussled and played around me. Of course, I had never actually been outside. I had never left the refuge, but this was what I imagined the outside looked like based on details I'd learned from reading books and watching old movies. Up ahead, miles of blue water spread out before me, my very own ocean. Dolphins leapt into the air and penguins sunbathed along the shore. Suddenly, a whale appeared. A spray of water burst from his blowhole and showered down on me. Drip, drip, drip. I blinked myself awake and touched my face. It was wet? Drip. I clicked on my bedside light and looked up at the damp patch in the ceiling. The roof was leaking again from all the rain. It didn't seem fair. I couldn't go outside, but the outside had managed to get in. Breakfast was in the ballroom. That's where we had all our meals. The formal dining room was too small to fit everyone. Instead, it was our makeshift school. I liked the ballroom. It was big and beautiful. Mama told me that it was where people used to dance. I sometimes imagined ladies in long flowing dresses twirling beneath the glittering chandeliers. Today's meal was ham and hash brown potatoes. I hated ham. I hated everything about it. The rubbery texture, the pale pink color, the glistening fat. Most of all, I hated the smell. But canned ham was easy to come by during raids. It was the cockroach of meats. It had survived the end of the world. We had it a lot, unfortunately for me. So I did what I always did. I served myself a big plate of hash brown potatoes. The grown-ups had set up several tables and chairs across the marble floors. They didn't usually sit with us at meals. They sat at their own big table. Papa liked to use these times to go over security issues with the other grown-ups. Mary, Mateo, and Bing were already sitting at the blue table when I walked over with my plate. It was a holdover from when we were little. They had divided us kids up, and we lived in hallways that were painted different colors. There was green and blue. I was a blue kid like Mary and Bing and Mateo. Sure, everyone played together and learned together and did chores together, but for some reason we always fell back into our old color groups at mealtimes. It was just easier, I guess. There was no fighting, no trying to impress someone else or jostle for attention. No ham, Razzi? Bing asked, bouncing on his seat. Bing was 7 and had skinny legs and arms and could never sit still. Mama called him her little tornado because he was always in motion. He was the youngest blue and my annoying little brother. You know me, I said. You hate ham, right, Razzi? Bing asked. Right. Mama just went to the kitchen to get the muffins, Bing said. What kind of muffins? Mateo asked, his eyes peeking out from beneath his long, dark bangs. Chocolate chip, Bing exclaimed. I grinned. I love chocolate. Chocolate again? Mary complained, rolling her eyes. Ugh. Mateo and Mary were 11-year-old twins, but they were complete opposites. Where Mateo was quiet and easygoing, Mary complained about everything. From her room, it was the biggest, to her wardrobe. She had more clothes than me. She would probably complain if unicorns showed up and gave us bags of candy. I'm so excited, Bing said, bouncing in his chair. It's hand-me-down night. Once a year, all 6 of us kids got together and handed down clothes that no longer fit. Over the years, instead of just handing down clothes, we had started to hand down personal belongings, toys, comics, stuff like that. Since Bing was the youngest kid at the refuge, it was almost like a second birthday celebration for him. "Hey, Razzi," Mary said with a sly look, "I think you should hand down your beanbag to me." I snorted, shaking my head. My beanbag was my favorite possession in the world. It was big and orange, and when you sat in it, you felt like you were being hugged. "Aren't you getting a little big for a beanbag?" Mary asked, prodding me. I was 12, but since when was there an age limit on beanbags? "No," I said. "I think it will look much better in my room." "I don't," I said. "It might look better in Mary's room," Bing chimed in. "She has that empty space in the corner." "Then give her your beanbag," I suggested. He looked confused. "But I don't have one." Matteo interrupted us. "Guys," he said in his usual blunt way, "what do you think will happen to Ollie's stuff?" We all stared at each other, silent. I had no idea what would happen to Ollie's stuff, because Ollie was dead. "It's sad," Bing said with the bluntness of a little kid. Sad was such a small word for such a big, terrible feeling. Sad didn't begin to describe the gaping hole Ollie had left behind. I looked over at his old table, the green table. Ray and Neela didn't talk. Instead, they stared at their plates and half-heartedly picked at their food. I couldn't begin to imagine how Ray and Neela felt. Ollie had been the eldest Green at 12, followed by Ray at 11 and Neela at 8. The Greens had been the smaller group, with just 3 kids. Now there were only 2. My stomach churned. It was all my fault. If only I'd told the grown-ups. If only I'd done something different. If only... "Maybe we should invite them to sit at our table from now on," Matteo suggested. "Sure," I said. Matteo had a big heart. "I don't want to read today," Mary complained. We kids had a fixed schedule at the refuge. The grown-ups believed that children needed consistency. There was breakfast, then we did school, reading and writing and math with Jaya. She was the only grown-up who had the same job in the refuge as she'd had in the before time. Jaya had been a professor and had taught something called Shakespeare. Next was life lessons. After that was lunch, then chores, then play, then dinner. "There's your mom with the muffins," Matteo said, pointing across the room to where my mother walked through the large arched doorway carrying a platter. Bing jumped to his feet. "Me first," he said, but before he could take a step, we heard it. Chuff, chuff, chuff. Something roared overhead, and we all froze. The sound was terrifying. Chuff, chuff, chuff. "Ben!" Mama cried, the platter tumbling from her hands. Ben was my father. Papa leapt up from the grown-ups table and shouted, "Searcher!" Everything happened at once. We scrambled out of our chairs and under the table. Papa called this duck and cover. Someone hissed, "Quiet!" and the sound of the searcher filled the air. Chuff, chuff, chuff. I crouched beneath the table, holding still. I knew they couldn't see us. All the windows in the building had been boarded up long ago by the old owner to keep the poison out, but Papa worried that they might be able to hear us somehow. Chuff, chuff, chuff. It sounded like it was flying slowly over us. Had we finally been discovered? My heart pounded at the thought. We had been safe all these years. There hadn't been a searcher in ages. "I'm scared," Bing whined. Come here," I said. He fell into my lap and buried his face in my long curly hair. I'd always hated my hair. The curls were so frizzy, but I knew Bing found it comforting. "It'll be okay," I whispered. He shook in my arms, and I knew he was crying. I kind of felt like crying too. The great poisoning had been over a decade ago. Countries around the world had abandoned nuclear weapons in the names of peace. But some stupid country decided to start a war anyway and used a space weapon that showered poison down from the sky. Most living things, people and animals, had died from the initial attack. Searchers looked for survivors. And then, it was rumored, killed them. "Do you think the searchers spotted us?" Matteo asked in a low voice. Papa had always sworn that we'd be safe here in the refuge, and I believed him. Even if I was scared, I knew I had to be brave for the others. I was the first, the oldest kid in the refuge. It was my job to guide the other kids to make good choices. Not that Ollie had ever really listened to me. He said that just because I was 2 months older than him, it didn't make me any smarter. But I was good at being first. I took it seriously because Papa said survival was serious. It had been drilled into me from a young age to be calm and comforting and responsible. I listened to the grown-ups. Unlike Ollie, he'd always pushed boundaries, gotten in trouble. Why had he been that way? Chuff, chuff, chuff. Razzi, Bing whined. Shh, we're safe, I whispered. Why is it here? Mateo whispered back. I shook my head. I don't know. Slowly, the whir, whir, whir sound grew more distant. I held my breath and waited, hoping this meant the searcher was moving away and not coming back. Bing whimpered in my arms. After what felt like forever, Papa shouted, "Clear!" We crawled out from underneath the tables and stood around blinking in the bright light. I felt shaky and out of sorts, like someone had woken me up in the middle of a bad dream. Everyone okay? I asked my blue crew. Mateo nodded, and Bing gave a bright smile. I almost forgot about the muffins, Bing said, and dashed away. Mary turned to me. I'm not okay. Oh, I said, confused. Can I do anything? She blinked dramatically. I'd feel a whole lot better if you gave me your beanbag. I rolled my eyes. I hope you check out Outside, coming this fall. Have a great day and keep reading.